So we're going to start from scratch in Cura. Let's say you've made it to the Add a Printer page. So what we're going to do is add a non-networked printer. Specifically, we're looking for the Creality 3D Ender 3. So we'll scroll down to Creality 3D, and then let's find the Ender 3, and we'll select that. So we don't actually need to select Ender 3 Pro, then we'll click Next. It's going to have a bunch of settings that are pre-built. All of these should be good, so we'll go ahead and click Next. And then now we've got our print bed right here. So let's go ahead and add a model. So we'll click this File Open button. My file's in my downloads. It's a CaliCat, so I'm going to open that. It's going to insert it centered on my model. So let's look at some of the tools we have here. So if we want to pan around, you can click with your right click, and you can also resize or move your object with these tools on the left. So right now I've got the Move tool. It allows me to change the placement of my model, but I want to go ahead and keep it centered, so I'm going to Control Z that. As well, you can scale it. So second tool is scaling, and let's go ahead and make this guy 200% what he was before. So I'm going to type 200%, enter, and then I want to keep it uniform scaling. That way he stays consistent. And then here you can rotate your model, like if you realize there's a better placement than having it the way it is when you loaded it in. For this one, he's actually designed to be printed with his feet down. So let's go ahead and rotate him back to the way he was. It's nice, it snaps in increments, so that way you stay on degrees of 5. There's some other tools for if you want to duplicate or mirror your model. As well, there's a support blocker, but we'll worry about that later. So let's look at our settings. So up here is your filament type. So we're going to be mainly using PLA, although we might use ABS and PETG in my class, but let's select PLA. And then over here is your print settings. So 0.2 is a pretty good size for how much it moves up and down. Here's the infill or the density, 20% is good. We don't actually need support, but if we did, let's look at where it would be. So everywhere that's red is where it recommends having support. So let's check that, and we'll also check adhesion. I'll explain what those two are in a second. So let's go ahead and slice this and look at what the supports do. So if you go over here to preview, you can see exactly what that looks like in your model. All of the turquoise stuff would be where the supports are. But since these degrees are about 45, we don't really need those supports. So let's reslice it. So you can see there's no supports anymore. I think that's pretty good. The turquoise down on the bed, that's the adhesion. So I like doing that to make sure that my model stays adhered to the build plate. So I think this is good. Let's go ahead and stick in our SD card. So once your SD card is in, you'll see it changes over here the blue button to Send to Removable Drive. So we'll click that, and then we eject our SD, and we are ready to head over to the printer. We'll go ahead and insert our micro SD upside down in the slot, and let's load some filament. So we'll go over here to our screen, and then we'll go to Prepare, and we'll preheat it to PLA, and this will begin preheating the nozzle to 200 and the bed to 50 degrees, and these are in Celsius. So let's go ahead and take our filament and insert it in this little hole in the hot end. So there's a little black button you can depress here that will open it up so it's easier to insert. And it's a little challenging to start getting it into the actual tube. But once you've got it into the tube, you can either continue just pushing it by hand or roll the little blue wheel right here. So when you roll the little blue wheel, you can see it starts feeding filament out of the nozzle. So the filament has been loaded correctly. So let's go ahead and go to Prepare again. And then we're going to Auto Home. And this time we're trying to level our bed. So once it's homed, it basically touches all of the limit switches as far in the corner as it can. That's going to be the starting position for your leveling. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the 3D printer. And then we're going to adjust the leveling screws on the bottom to make sure that the nozzle is just like a micron above the print bed. So you'll get better at this as you try it more and more, but you want just a tiny little gap right there. Then we're going to repeat this process for all 4 corners of the bed. So I'll scroll it over to the right, loosen, get it to where it's just a little gap, go to the back, loosen, same thing, and then let's take it back over to the left. And then just to be sure, we'll double check here back at the front that it hasn't moved at all, and then we can turn the printer back on. So let's go ahead and get it preheated for our actual print. So we'll go to Prepare again, preheat PLA, heating up to 250 again. This time we're actually going to use the bed's heat. And then let's go back and then to print, and we'll select our model from the models on the SD card. So mine is the one called Calicat. So I'll click it and that'll get the print started. You'll see that the numbers haven't reached 250 yet. The print is not going to start until those numbers have fully reached what they're set to. So let's go ahead and look at it as it reaches those numbers. So it's going to rehome each of the axes, and then it's going to get started by laying down a strip of plastic here on the left side. So this is normal. This is just to clean out your nozzle. Since it's been preheating there, it's built up a bunch of residue, and this is going to make sure that your nozzle is open. And then since I put the build plate adhesion, it's going to start putting the outer edges of that as the first part of the layer. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust where I can see it's digging into the bed a little bit too much. So I'm going to tighten down all 4 screws so that way the bed is a little bit further away from the nozzle. And then once you've got it correct, you can see it's laying down that build plate adhesion pretty well. And we can go ahead and let our print continue. I recommend watching all the way through the first layer to make sure it lays correctly. So my print's going well so far. And let's take a look at some of the things we can edit. So you can change the speed here. I've edited the speed to where it's printing 300%. You can also change the nozzle temperature if you realize that the nozzle isn't extruding properly. I don't recommend necessarily printing this fast, but it saves time if you want to try it. So I woke up to the print having failed. I'm not sure exactly why. It's probably because I was printing too fast, made a bunch of spaghetti, but I'll still be able to show us getting this off the bed. So first we're going to look at a few ways of how not to use the scraper tool. So you don't want to just hit it over and over again. You also don't want to apply so much force that you could slip and cut yourself. What you're going to want to do is apply a firm and even pressure and kind of wiggle until your tool makes it under the model. And then once you've got your tool underneath your model, you're going to want to work it around until it works its way underneath as many corners as you can of your model. This one is adhered very well to the plate. So I'm going to work around to the left. I think I've got the front 2 legs off at this point. So let's go ahead and work around to the right. I'm going to get it in that back leg. And there we go, and it's off. I messed up the tape a little bit on the build plate, but we can always just go ahead and try and print again.